Got something a little bit different for you today. We're actually going to do a prototype preview of a game that'll be coming out at some point in the future. The game is called Trove, and it's kind of a dungeon crawl, maybe a little bit on the lighter side, but it's an asymmetric game. There's 4 different roles that can be played. It can be played with as few as 2 people, but it has 4 different roles. The knight, the goblins, the dragon, and the cave. Keep in mind this game is in a very early prototype stage, so everything from the art to the components to maybe even some of the rules are still subject to change. I actually have this copy as a playtester, so that by itself should indicate there's possibility of some rules changes in the future. But I'm going to present it to you as is, and you can decide for yourself if it looks interesting to you. Let's get into it real quick, and then afterwards I'll wrap it up and add a few more points. So first let's take a look at what you'll get as the knight, since he's the first player. You're going to start with 3 potions. You've got 2 small potions and a great potion. These allow you to heal various amounts. Obviously the great potion is going to be much more powerful. So you start as level 1, and as you go along, for level 2 you get to choose between 2 different options here. Strong or quick, you can only choose one, and then you discard the other. Level 3 is going to have 3 different options, and these actually have some pretty cool abilities on them. For instance, with level 2, if you choose strong, you defeat 3 of the monster health or individual goblins instantly at the start of a fight. If you're quick, instead you get to move 1 extra space. And as you go along, you get hardy, which you ignore the first 2 hits before taking damage at this level. Valiant, move 1 extra space in your turn. So if you had quick and you had valiant, you start to get to where you can really move around pretty quickly. Or you can have deadly. You add 1 dice to your attack roll. And this will continue on up until you max out the levels. And there's a whole bunch of different options. Move 1 extra space in your turn there. Who Fights Like 100 Warriors lets you add another dice to your attack roll. So really you can kind of custom build your knight how you see fit and to your own personal style. Make him a big tank or make him really fast or however you want to do it. You'll have several dice. You only use 1 at the beginning of the game, but as you go along you can see that you're able to add dice. You start with 3 life and you flip those over as you take damage. You run out of life, you die obviously. And then you've got these bombs, which you can use either to destroy walls if you find yourself backed into a corner, or you can use them in battles. They kill 6 goblins at a time. So that's everything for the knight. Now as the knight moves along, let's say he moves here, you flip that over, and then you're allowed to orient it however you want. And he moves to there, at which point the cave player, or if you're playing a 2-player game, just whoever's playing, would add extra tiles there. And then on his next turn, the knight could again move there, and flip it over. And now you'll see these different symbols, and we'll get to that in a little bit what those mean. But different things can happen based on what symbol happens to be on the tile. And some of the tiles will have no symbols, and of course you would have added this here as well. As the knight continued along. For this symbol right here, what that actually means is it's a ambush. And let's say the goblin player rolled his dice and got a 5. He would then put 5 goblins there. Now if the knight rolled, let's say a 2, he'd kill 2 of these goblins, but the other 3 would stay behind and they would do a wound to him, at which point he would have flipped over 1 of his hearts. Now if he's got 3 left, he would roll again, and let's say, he rolled a 3 or higher. Let's say he rolled a 6. At that point, the rest of these goblins are dead, so all 5 are dead. All 5 get flipped over, turn into gold, and go into the knight player's treasure chest here, which he can then use at the end of his turn to buy levels, to level up basically. And when he takes damage in the future, once he's above level 1, instead of the hearts taking damage, what would happen is that particular level would take damage and become deactivated. So if he's a level 4, and this is what he had, this would get flipped over, at which point he had to pay 9 gold to reactivate that level, to repair that level basically. Imagine your armor is getting just, damaged, or your weapons or something along those lines. Next, we've got the Goblin player, who is going to have 3 dice he's going to use. 2 of them most of the time is what he's going to use, and he'll roll those to see how many goblins he gets at the beginning of his turn. In this case, he'd pull 5 from this bag. So, let's say we go in here, and we got 4 goblins so far. And I already got 5. Now, the other thing that's in this bag, if I can find any, because none of them are coming out right now. Let's see here. All goblins so far. The other thing that's in this bag are secret tokens. So let's say instead of 5 goblins, he pulled 4 and a secret token. Now first he can assign these goblins anywhere he wishes. So let's say 2 goblins there and 2 goblins there. Now you'll see we have 3 different tribes of possible goblins. And they each have a matching token or a matching standee with that tribe, and also a possible monster that could come out for that tribe as well. Now this secret token is going to get assigned to one of the tribes that has goblins in it. You can't assign a secret to a tribe with no goblins unless none of your tribes have goblins. At this point, he'll pull a secret card, and let's see, in this case we got poison. So the next time that tribe deals damage, let's say we put it on that tribe right there. Next time this tribe deals damage to the knight will be poisoned, which basically makes it where the knight can't heal as easily. He has to get rid of the poison first. Now, how do the tribes get out there? You can see over here on the board that the darkness tokens all have one of the symbols on it. The tribe can come in at any of the symbols that match his tribe. Once a goblin is in the darkness, instead of being completely hidden, which is where they are when they're just over on your side of the table, they can move within the darkness as many spaces as they want. If they come into the light, they'll actually lose 1 goblin for each space they move in the light. The exception to this is if they move directly into the space with the knight. To do battle with the knight, it's exactly the same as when a knight is ambushed. The knight will roll his die, or how many die he's allowed to roll, and deal that much damage to the goblins, and the goblins turn to gold. Now each time goblins that are in a tribe deal damage to the knight, they survive that first attack, what will happen is they gain a frenzy, which are these. You'll assign that to that particular tribe. They can either use the frenzy to roll the dice again to gain more goblins in that specific tribe, or you can use 3 frenzy, if you have 3 of those, to summon a monster. And there's a number of different types of monsters. You got Acid Blob, which destroys one of the extra dice that the knight has. You've got, in this case, not so much a monster as it is a bonus for that particular tribe. Each turn they'll roll an extra die in order to add more goblins to their tribe. You've got the rat of abnormal size. If there's any Princess Bride fans out there, you can catch that reference. What else do we have here? We've got an ogre, golem, gargoyle, queen spider, and it keeps going like that. There's a lot of really interesting monsters in there, and those will be represented on the board by the monster standee for that tribe. And each tribe can only have 1 monster that's in service to it at a time. Okay, so as a dragon, one of the primary things you're going to be using is going to be these cards that you have. Now, you start the game with 6 sloth cards, and really what these are is they're taking up space in your hand, which is a maximum hand size of 7 cards. They're just kind of taking up space until you're able to get rid of them. And there's several ways you can get rid of these. Is you can either do what it says on here, so here, keep until you use the action from any power card, then discard, at which point you get rid of that and you're able to get another card into your hand to take its place. Or you can pay some gold to get rid of them too. Now, of course, like I said, it'll be 7, so you'll have a 7th card in your hand when you start the game. And these cards are essentially a resource that will be used for certain other cards to trigger them, or you can use the actual power that's on it. In this case, pull or push an adjacent unit 3 tiles. And actually, if you did that to the knight, if you use the wing on the knight, you actually be able to get rid of this sloth card. So using these cards can sometimes help get rid of sloth cards as well. Other cards you'll see in here, Ignite.
You have to have 2 of the fire resource and 1 of the wing to reveal all tiles in a straight line in any direction starting from your tile. Also, you can see that you're able to use the ignite card instead as 3 wing or fire or claw resources, if you want to do that instead. There's a smash, hiss, scorch. There's a claw card you see for the claw resource. Another one of those. Got a few of those in a row. Flame. So you can see there's a bunch of different types of cards there and powers that the dragon has. Now, when the dragon is trapped in the ground, you'll be moving around with this claw and essentially kind of attacking from under the ground, I guess, maybe breaking through the ground a little bit, but you're not able to really escape the cave or the pit until you find the pit itself. When you're the claw, you can move as far as you want in any direction, as long as it's just a single direction in a straight line. Diagonal doesn't count. You can ignore walls, all this stuff, because really you're under the ground. You don't have to deal with walls at the level that the knight and the goblins are at because you're underneath them. Let's say this is what the board looks like after a few turns. And you can see we've found a crystal spot. Now the pit's going to be underneath the crystal, and these tokens are put out randomly. There's 3 of them whenever a crystal tile is revealed. And so whether it's the claw or the knight, whichever one wants to, they can smash this crystal. Now for the claw or the dragon to smash crystal, they can have no sloth cards in their hand. They got to get rid of all the sloth cards. But if this is flipped over, you can see this in this case, it's just a smashed crystal. There's nothing there. But if instead you had flipped it over and found it was the pit, at that point, if the claw is here, the dragon instead is able to come out, and you'd switch him out with the base. And the dragon would then be moving around the board. However, if the claw is somewhere else on the board, it's going to want to move there as quickly as possible to the pit and then escape from the pit. Once the dragon's out, the knight's going to be trying to kill the dragon, but the dragon is going to be more interested in escaping, trying to get back to the entrance of the cave and leaving. Something else the dragon player can do is take these gems and place them around the board. You have to be in the space to place it, but once you're there, and you can place more than one in a space if you want to. Once they're placed on the board, for each gem that's out there, you draw an extra one of these dragon cards on your turn, and then you always have to discard down to 7, but that at least gives you more options. Meanwhile, the knight and the goblins can also come and try to take these, and either they're going to be valuable, which lets them do all kinds of cool stuff that normally would take a significant amount of gold. So there's another valuable one. Or the third one is a trap and does significant damage, either kills all the goblins on that space and the adjacent space, or if the knight is adjacent or on that space, it destroys all of his levels, and he'll have to buy back up to fix those levels. Also during combat, the dragon has this special dice, which basically indicates which spaces are affected by the attack. And so, I mean, it's basically a 6-sided die, except in this case, it's the space the dragon's on, or, you know, this space, or in this case, it's going to be the 4 spaces around the dragon. Here's the one he's on, and those 4 around him. And you can see there's a bunch of different options here. And that's a pretty cool feature, a little bit different from your standard, you know, I'm going to attack this space. Now you're actually rolling the dice to see where exactly the attack's going to go. A couple other things. There is a way for the dragon to eat goblins and eat monsters, which if he eats goblins, he gets gold and all that kind of stuff. And there's a way to get more cards in your hand by spending gold. However, that's simply to draw more cards. Your maximum hand size remains at 7 no matter what. When it gets to the point where the knight is fighting the dragon, every time the knight lands a blow, he's going to take a card from the dragon's hand. And once the dragon escapes, one card that will be added to his hand is going to be this killing blow card. So basically what will happen is if the knight pulls that card from the dragon's hand, that means the knight has killed the dragon and the knight has won. Finally, we have the cave player. And what he's got here is he's going to have a stack of the darkness tiles with the different things underneath, obviously. He's going to keep 3 of these in his hand. And as the game goes, he's able to put them out onto the board, building the cave basically, and trying to lure the knight deeper and deeper into it and make it more and more difficult for the knight and the dragon, for that matter, to escape afterwards. As this goes along, he's going to be placing these tiles out, and more of these will be put out. Once he gets all of the tiles placed, then he's able to start collapsing the cave. And when the cave collapses, his plan is to eventually kill everything in the cave. And that's how he wins. He also is going to have these cards that are essentially his responsibility, but they're event cards. And whenever the knight goes on to an event, he's going to give one to the knight. And you can see some of them are going to be bad. For instance, that one there. There's one snake bite, poisons the knight, triple ambush, or it could be good. The knight gets a sword, add one die to the knight's attack. So those vary a good bit. Let's talk real quick about the different symbols on the tiles. This right here is an event. That's what triggers these. That's how the knight ends up with more of these. If somehow one of these is revealed without the knight going onto it, then you would place one of these on that tile to remind you that the knight has not triggered the event in that tile yet, and he still can when he goes through. Once an event's triggered, though, it doesn't get re-triggered just by the knight showing up there. You've got these spike pits that damage the knight when he goes through it. You have these tiles that are ambush tiles. We already talked about that a little bit. And then you have tiles that have nothing in it. And of course, you have 3 of those tiles right there, which are really kind of the crux of the game. That's what the whole game is based around, is finding the crystal tiles and then either finding the pit, or in the cave's case, you're trying to destroy the crystal tiles in order to bring down the whole cave. And the final type of tile that I forgot to mention already is the trap door. Once you have more than one trap door out on the board, you're able to travel between the trap doors as if they were adjacent. So it makes it easier to get around the board a little bit. And that's something that maybe the cave is going to have to rotate tiles and that sort of thing in order to make it more difficult for the trapdoors to be effective means of transportation. One final thing, going back to the gold. When the knight spends gold, he's going to move it to his right, and that's going to go to the cave. The cave is able to use gold in order to reinitiate events. They can place these tokens back onto event tiles to cause a new event to occur when the knight triggers it. They can also use gold in order to rotate tiles in order to create more of a maze situation where the knight might have to use bombs to get through. Of course, maybe the knight's out of bombs at that point. Once the cave spends gold, it's going to go to the dragon. The dragon, like I said before, is able to use gold to get rid of sloth cards or to draw more of these cards. And then once the dragon spends them, it goes to the goblin, who then will take these and put them back in his bag, because those are his goblin soldiers, and the more gold that's out on the board, the less goblin soldiers are in that bag. So there you go. Like I said, it's obviously an asymmetric game, and that includes even different objectives for each side. The knight's trying to kill the dragon, the goblins are trying to kill the knight, the dragon's just trying to escape, and the cave is trying to kill everybody, basically. If this looks like something you'd be interested in supporting, I'll have information in the description below as to how you can do that. Obviously, right now it's in the very early prototype stages, but at some point I'm sure it may become available for you to back, or however it goes about getting developed and published. So if it's something you think you might be interested in, take a look at it. And until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.